Singapore is one of the home offices of Harvey International. We have the US office that was started earlier. So whenever I ask, when people ask which organization are you with, I said Harvey, they know what? And they will remember, maybe the older generation, they will link it to someone in Indonesia, right?
President.
Yeah. And it's good too if they know the word, at least there's some memory of it. So Habibi basically is an Arabic word of endearment. It is my beloved. If you have been to the Middle East and stay there for a period of time, you will feel it quite frequent. If they consider you their friend, they will call you Ya Habibi, or for the ladies, sometimes it's Ya Habibati. Yeah, so there's a difference. But basically, it means my beloved. And why was this name chosen? Really, the founder felt that because it's a common term of endearment, it is also a reminder to us as children and servants of God that our basic primary identity, we are the beloved of God. So we want to serve and love people out of that identity. So if there's no other Arabic word that you learn today, just remember this word. Just a very brief history. If you want the detailed history, there is an article that is in the folder that you can read from. What I want to point out is that between 2015 to 2016, when Willie received a plea for help, it didn't take him 1 year to respond. Actually, he responded quite immediately, and the first Yazidi refugee he encountered was in Turkey, and he brought him in to the refugee camp to serve until he got kicked out. And then he received another plea for help from a Yazidi youth that went back to northern Iraq. So Habibi International, our service field is in northern Iraq, in the region, Kurdistan region of northern Iraq. So it's an autonomous region. So this is a brief history, and as Zhu mentioned, Habibi Singapore was registered in 2021. So what happened was, we came to Singapore during the COVID period, wanting to recruit longer-term workers. Yeah, and I think in the process, if you notice, there's another point you should notice is 2014 and 2021, something birthed during crisis situations. Yeah, so I think this is how many times God bring about through a crisis. So where is Habibi International operating? Singapore is known as the little red dot, right? So there's another little red dot in Kurdistan. It's called Zaho, and the Habibi International team is based in Zaho. It's quite an interesting city. If you read in Wikipedia, you will find out that Habibi International, we are not the first missionaries or mission workers there. In fact, in the 1700s, there was a Dominican priest that brought the gospel there. At some point, it was also known as the Jerusalem of Kurdistan as well. So there were Jewish communities. You have the Assyrians and the Chaldeans that you read about in the scriptures, but if you are there, you encounter these people. So it's quite an ancient city. And why Zaho was chosen is because we really felt that in the other two cities, Erbil, the capital, as well as too many NGOs are there. So he wanted to go to where, the city where there were no NGOs. And at that time, when we moved the NGO to Zaho, I think Habibi was the first one to be present there. So Zaho is the place that we are operating from. So what is our vision? Our vision is to see transforming communities, but among the persecuted and displaced in the Middle East. So the keywords: transforming communities, persecuted and displaced, and the region in the Middle East. So we want to transform lives of forcibly displaced people through two ways: humanitarian relief, and sustainable development, and also in partnership. So there are two ways of reaching out to the people that crisis relief as well as development work. So it's not just pure crisis relief, because that is pretty short term. Development work will pass along with engagement with the people there. And we can't take alone, and therefore we want to partner with like-minded entities. So this is a picture of the IDPs, internally displaced persons from Syria escaping from ISIS. And this is the people group, the Yazidis, that got first place the burden upon people. So these are the people that we are administering to. These are our values. We follow Jesus. We put it out very directly that we are Christian NGO. We follow Jesus. We don't we preach Jesus. Why? Being a follower of Jesus means that you're going to incarnate the life of Christ in the community that you're serving. I won't go through all the values, but it's pretty straightforward. But straightforward doesn't mean it's easy to practice. Yeah. So what do? We serve Yazidis and Syrians in the Kurdistan region of Iraq through holistic health care. So it's not just Yazidis, but also Syrian refugees. Because Zaho is just half an hour from Turkey and Syria. A lot of Syrian refugees crossing the border into Kurdistan itself. So we've extended also our service to the Syrian refugees as well. Medical, holistic health care, medical. Habibi International, prior to the pandemic, was started actually based on a lot of medical, short-term medical teams, dental teams, education teams that really brought into Kurdistan. And I think that has laid a very good foundation in terms of its fitness and testimony. And this is why we was able to register Habibi International as an NGO in Kurdistan itself. So this paved the way for us to actually bring to do the work. Yeah. So medical work is very important to us. So we bring in specialist teams, orthopedic teams, neurogynecological teams, lab palate, teams, specific surgeries because many of the refugees or IDPs do not have access to this kind of medical help. Yeah, so we want to provide something that is not accessible to them. And then the other picture is we also do rehabilitation work. So that's the follow-up work, especially for orthopedic surgeries. So we do need quite a lot of like physiotherapies and occupational therapies to do the follow-up work. So that's the medical part. Every year we have about 4 or 5 medical teams going in. Last year we have our first Singapore cataract team where we can do the operations. We do mental health as well. So Habibi International is the first NGO to establish a dental clinic inside a refugee camp. Prior to that, we did have a dental clinic, but it was outside the camp. And because of that, it's kind of a chore for the refugees or the IDPs to travel out, right? And maybe they are not familiar with or they don't want to leave the material. So it was not very highly utilized. But when we set up the clinic in the camp, we started operating last week. Within, I think, 4 or 5 months, we have about 1,000 patients registered with us. Because of the proximity to the refugees themselves, I think we wanted to use that service. So that is Jimmy, Singaporean dentist, doing a job. I think this picture is posed because the one lying there, the patient is actually our local nurse. Yeah, but this is how the clinic looks like, very modern. We do mental health as well. So you see our mental health worker from Singapore. Currently we have 2. One is from Children's Church. Yeah, so what does our mental health workers do? We provide trauma counseling. They do group work with the teenage girls. They also do pre and post surgical mental health support work, especially for children going through orthopedic surgeries. So you see the mental health assistant, she is a local Kurdish woman, and she's been trained by our Singaporean worker to do a level of play therapy so that the child can be calm just before surgery. Yeah, and then there's another of our mental health workers doing training. So the training is for our international staff as well as local staff, but it's also extended to the other NGO workers on. So the kind of trainings they do will be child safety, suicide prevention, etc. So that's the mental health work. We have education, which is quite a big thing. So the education program has we employ local teachers to run the classes. Apart from providing livelihoods to the locals, I think this is also very aspirational for the children to see their own people teaching them. And I think it motivates them to participate and learn actively because one day perhaps they envision themselves standing in front of the class teaching others. In fact, we have the children teaching their own peers. what they've learned in the class. So the English program is going on very well. We have actually expanded the classes to higher levels as well. Yeah, this is the learning lab or the computer literacy program. So we pioneered this last year. It is also quite in demand. They have smartphones, but they have no access to laptops. So they appreciate the opportunity to use laptops and learn IT skills. This is a women's literacy class. We have a local teaching these ladies Arabic. The ladies wanted the class themselves because they wanted to make sure that the children are filling the forms correctly and stuff like that. But it is a very good opportunity for them to get out of their tents, also for social interaction, and at the same time learn something, learn a new skill or learn a language. So we visit the locals. So our staff team, volunteers to the stations. Not all the tents look like this. Many times I think it's in the worst condition than this. So the station is one of the key things that our staff and volunteers do. We have a crochet class as well. So one of the local ladies who know how to crochet volunteered to teach the ladies. Yeah. So again, this brings the community together. Okay, community center. So we built a community center. I think beginning or end of 2021, right? Yeah, end of 2021. So Wendy, before he came to Singapore, actually requested from the local government for a piece of land in the refugee camp to build a community center. But he couldn't proceed because of pandemic. Then he came to Singapore. And then all the work happening here in Singapore. He set up the Singapore office, with the help of Heidi, and then Zhiwen was recruited to be the chairperson of community board. Yeah, and recruited long-term workers. So I'll show you two videos of the community center.